cool and collected.
Because I'm worn out.
That looks good, doesn't it?
Okay, we're not doing this every day.
You don't like staring at yourself?
I like looking at myself.
All right,
What
fine.
do you have to say? Okay.
Start talking about yourself as us.
We should turn it towards you guys.
Will got me up in front of the camera and said, when we meet shoulder to shoulder, eye to eye, you know, I had ideals.
Okay, here we go. Hey, does anybody have a question? Don't answer, ask it. I want to talk a little bit about after the closing. We're having a lot of problems after the closing, a lot more than we've had in a long, long time. And it has to do with issues that the buyer finds with the house after they moved in. You know, one of the biggest problems we've had this last 3 months with some of those massive rainstorms we had, those microbursts that came through. There was that one couple of days where we had 4 or 5, maybe more than that, of our homes that we had sold got water in the basement. And so what does the buyer think? Oh, the seller knew that, never disclosed it. And you call the seller, and the seller says, hey, that never happened to me. And people say, that's a lie. You can't say that. But, you know, I've been around here long enough that I've gotten water in my basement once from a massive microburst that hit my neighborhood. And Kevin and Jess, I didn't live too far away from each other at the time, and his whole basement filled with water. He and I were down there trying to get his furniture out of there. It had come in through a window well, and it was like a waterfall of water coming in here. Now, mine wasn't quite that bad, but the point is that stuff happens. And that's the only time it ever happened to his house. But the point is that buyers are struggling, believing that that's the case. Okay, the one that I got the call on yesterday, excuse me, they've been in that. Okay, so part of during the due diligence of buying this house, there was a couple of things. This one had nothing to do with water, by the way. But they had a dog, the owner had a dog, and the dog had scratched the glass doors, you know, just shredded the glass doors. And so part of the resolution of due diligence is that they would agree to change the glass door and put in a new one. And the seller said, great, why don't we put it in right at closing, you know, before you take possession, last minute, let's just get it in so that it would be, and they said, no, we want it in before inspection. Which I'm thinking, well, you know, the seller's thinking, well, I got a dog that ruins it, but I'll, you know, keep it locked up, whatever. So they changed it out. They did their inspection. Everything was fine. Or their walkthrough, excuse me. It was after inspection. So they wanted it done before walkthrough, which was a couple of days before the actual settlement. And everything was fine. They closed. Seller moves out. Buyer moves in. That was 2 weeks ago. Now, they say there's one scratch on that door, and they expect the seller to replace it again. And they found a broken window in the house, and they expect the seller to pay for it. And I got a call from Melissa last night. So what is the seller's responsibility in a situation like this? Now here's my question to you: what is the seller's responsibility?
Nothing. As is, they have done all the inspections, they have done everything as is.
That's it. It's pretty simple. You know, you can't get into a pissing contest with another agent. It's not your responsibility. Our agency ends the day of settlement. Excuse me, recording and closing. It's over. That agency is expired. We don't have an agency with that person anymore. But, you know, we want to make things right the best we can, because we want to have that client still have a good experience and want to refer us other business. Correct? That's the key to our business, is creating more business from our past customers or from our customers. And so when something goes south, if you just say, hey, it's not my problem, go, you're gonna have to call an attorney, don't talk to me anymore. In fact, I'm blocking you from my cell phone. You're not gonna get very far. You know, I had a guy back in my early career as a broker back in the early 90s, who was actually killed in an ice climbing event. He was about 200 feet up, free climbing, ice climbing, and he fell and killed him, got killed. But he treated every deal just like that. Every deal, he had no chance of ever getting a referral, never something like it. And he was really good. And he did a lot of business, but there were never going to be a repeat customer. I used to sit down and say, you're never going to survive if you don't start helping, being nice to these people. But he would just brutalize them through the whole thing. But anyway, so that doesn't work. So what do you got to do? You got to be really careful what you say, and you got to be really careful how far you push it. Now, there are some brokers in this community who way over get involved. And I don't even think that they realize it. Dave Frederickson's one, he's a great guy, KW, but he just, when a buyer of theirs has a problem, he's almost becomes the attorney to try to help resolve this thing. And then they start to expect more and more and more and more. Then they almost believe you are going to be paying their attorney fee for them when they do have to hire an attorney. That's just not the case. So you got to be really careful how far you push this thing. In this particular case, I said we represented the seller, and the issue was, here you are 2 weeks in. Now there's a scratch on the door that you didn't notice. Now, don't you think, I'm a judge now in a small claims court, that if that was the most important thing to you and you wanted that fixed, which they did, and then you moved in that house, wouldn't you walk right over there and look at that glass door? I mean, I would have.
Did they have a dog?
They have a dog too,
Oh.
but their dog wouldn't do that. Isn't that amazing? They have 2 dogs, and neither one of them are like that. They don't scratch glass. Okay.
They have a camera?
No. So the point is, our agent is passing on to the seller. I said, all you can do is tell the seller what the buyer agent told you. But then you go back to the buyer's agent and said, you know what? And she did that. And the seller said, absolutely no chance. They have 2 dogs. That window that's now broken was not broken. I've been in that house for 20 plus years. That window was not broken. There's no way. And I said, you just have to, in a nice way, you've got to contact the other agent and just say, hey, I talked to my seller, here's it. If your buyer still has a problem, they're going to need to contact the seller directly. But I'm removing myself. My seller does not want me to be involved anymore. And that's the end of it. But if you don't cut it off, it will never cut off. You keep getting sucked in, and you get sucked in, and you get sucked in, and you start to say too much. Remember one of Will's biggest pieces of advice, if you ever get called into the division of real estate, you don't want to go by yourself, and you want to be really careful what you say, because they will use everything you say against you. It's the same in a situation like this. You just start spouting. We're salespeople. What do? We talk too much. That's what we do. And so we'll tend to say a little more than we need to say. And so in a situation like that, you got to be very careful what you say. You got to be very careful what you put in an email. You got to be very careful what you may put in a text, because reality is it may come back on you. Okay. So you want to cut it off in a genuine way. And here's the question that came up. Should I give this buyer's agent my seller's contact information because they moved? I don't think so, unless the seller says it's okay. And you could say that, hey, they want me to give you your mailing address. Is that okay? And if he says yeah, then you go for it. If he says absolutely not, then you just say, you know what, I can't do that. I'm sorry. They're just gonna have to find him, and end the discussion. But you have to remove yourself from the problem. Now you've done that. You remove yourself from the buyer's side problem because it has nothing to do with you. You've got to make sure the seller understands too that you aren't a collection agent. You aren't a protection of somebody trying to collect from him. They sometimes think that by signing a buyer broker and a real estate transaction that we now represent them legally. And so therefore our attorneys represent them legally. I've had that 1,000 times, you know, and it's not just from the client. I've had it from the agents and come and said, hey, our attorney needs to help this guy. And I said, well, why would our attorney help this guy? Well, he's gotten in trouble with this buyer. I said, yeah, what's that got to do with us? Well, we represented him in the sale. Yeah, that's what we did, not in anything else. He needs to hire his own attorney. And they're like aghast. Really? Our attorney doesn't help them if they have problems after the closing? I said, absolutely not. But I've heard that since I became a broker. Agents get confused about that. And the reason I know that so well is because when I was an agent, I went to my manager and asked him the same thing. And our attorney, you know, is back this person up on this seller, and I found out that's not how it works. But it's just a mistake we all make. So you're going to have those problems. We're having more of that than I've ever seen before, and I'm very surprised about that, because what we're saying, well, you know, everybody says, oh, this market's incredible. We're selling a lot of homes. We're not selling more homes than we've ever sold before. Volume, we are in some cases, but not units. Units are down. Volume is up. And so we've sold more units before in a real estate market, but we didn't have as many problems as we're having now. Now, what's causing them, I don't know. And why so many more, I'm not sure. But I do think a lot of some of the issues we're having with some of these houses is the functional obsolescence of homes. They're getting older, you know. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, or in one of the classes, as I recall, about the Sugar House area. I mean, I used to live there. I own in the Harvard Yale area. I owned 4 homes there over a period of years, all within. I mean, you could just see every one of them from each house. You could see where they all were, and you know what? There was nothing really wrong with them, but you knew it was coming. And man, that's 25 years ago, 30 years ago, some of them, and it's just that much more tree limbs. You know, that much more movement, and they're all having a lot of sewer problems right now, all through there. We got to understand that there's going to be more problems. So we have to make sure our buyer does all the tests and checks that he possibly can. So when someone asks you what an inspection is, and you say, well, it's only $250, no, that's just for the inspector. You got to scope the sewer. You've got to have a roof inspection. You maybe want a structural inspection on some of these older neighborhoods, because there are some cracks in those foundations, and some of them have been there forever. I don't know if you remember, you may not have seen it. Some of you may have. There was a house on Westminster that Kevin Jensen had listed. It was only on the market for a couple of days before it sold. My gosh, you should have seen the crack in this thing. I looked at it thinking about buying. The trouble is, I can't buy any of our listings, but you still want to go think about it. But this crack up by the front door was massive, like this, along the brick line. That wall, you could stick your hand through it into the living room. And I'm thinking, man, this place is a mess. You know, so the buyer had a structural engineer come out. I was anxious to see what he said. No problem. He said, this house, it slipped at once. It's never going to move again. The reason it did slip is because it never had a driveway on this side of the house. It was always just dirt. And so he said, if you put a driveway here, which it needs because there's a double car garage back there, that would help, help shore it up. But you just need to fill it in. There's no structural problems with this house. But boy, I tell you, you wouldn't have thought that by looking at it. So my point is inspections are going to cost buyers more money. Absolutely. Now, on this broken window, do inspectors look for broken windows?
I would think, yeah.
I think they do.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know what I
anything that is
mean?
visible, I mean, they won't tell you about wiring because it's behind the wall.
Yeah, but you can see the windows. And so, the argument on this other one is that the seller said that window was not broken when we owned the house. And besides, wouldn't the inspector have caught it? Well, I would think so. Wouldn't the walkthrough have caught it? Didn't you see it? And well, if it's a back bedroom, you might not catch it. One of our broken window cases was a garage window, and it had a blind pulled down over it. And buyer gets in there later, and first day they're moving in, and they open the blind, and here's this massively broken window. Well, they never noticed it because they never raised the blind. It was the garage. And so people aren't paying as much attention to the garage. In that particular case, the seller did feel a little guilty, and so he did replace the window after the fact. But the point is, did he have to replace the window? Did he know it was broken? He said he did, and he didn't disclose it. That's probably a disclosable item, and so he did feel guilty, and so he fixed it, and we moved on. But this case that I'm just talking about Atlas, I don't think that seller has any responsibility. And when he's sitting in a small claims court situation, if that's what the buyer decides to do, because that's really his only option, think about you in the judge's seat. You're going to think what I'm thinking. Wait a minute, you lived there 2 weeks, you did your inspection, you did your walkthrough, you've got 2 dogs. Who's to say your dog didn't scratch the window? Who's to say that, moving in, somebody bumped the window? I mean, you just don't know. I can't, as a judge, say that what happened in the 2 weeks you own the house. Therefore, I can't rule in your favor. That's what's going to happen. We had a case a long time ago. I was with Wardley, been on the Guards for a short period of time, from Gumpanaires to Wardley, and then Wardley was purchased by Coldwell Banker. In that period of time, we had 2,000 agents, so we did a lot of deals. Oh my gosh, tons and tons of deals. We were in small claims court every week with buyer-seller issues, just kind of help being there for them. I saw so many interesting cases and watched how the judges responded. And small claims court is a crapshoot for them because it's a very emotional case. It's not so much about case law, because there is no case law in small claims court. I mean, none of this sets precedent for later on. And so you just have to argue your case, and it's whoever he believes the most or presents the most evidence, I assume. But in the small claims court, this guy walked away with the microwave. It was clearly on the REPC, and a lot of the sprinkler heads were broken off. And so, this was a couple months after the closing. It closed like in February. This was like April, and we're in this case, and they're giving the explanation about all this. And the judge finally comes down. He says, "Okay, tell you what." He said, "I'll give you the microwave." He said, "Yes, he owes you a microwave." I looked at the value. You're right. It was like $345. So I grant you the $345, but I can't grant you the sprinkler heads. And they said, "But they were." So many of them were broken off. He said, "Yeah," but he said, "You've been there for 2.5 months. I don't know if the next door neighbor's dog chewed them off or if kids in the street kicked them off in the 2.5 months that you owned them. I have no proof of that, and I can't give you the sprinkler heads." So that's how it panned out. So the fact that these people have been in that house 2 weeks will hurt them if they try to push that issue. Even though, would you waste your time for?
How much is the broken window?
Well, the sliding window was $500.
Yeah.
The broken window, they didn't get a bid on. It's probably a couple $100, I assume. It's just replacing the glass. You're not replacing the whole window, but I don't know. But anyway, we'll see. Be interesting to see how that pans out. But got to get yourself out of there. You will have those issues. There's no question about it. But you prepare yourself to not have as many issues as you're representing a buyer, to make sure they do the proper inspections and everything else. And if it gets missed, it's on their inspector. It's not on the seller of the house. Okay. How many of you have seen a seller's disclosure, though, where a seller's disclosed that there's broken windows? Let's go to the seller's disclosure really quick. I want to see if there's a place that you would say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to put that right here." Seller's disclosure is where? It's in number 5. Number 5, the fourth one in, I believe. Seller's property condition disclosure right here. The ownership, additions, remodels, use of property, roof, natural gas, water, sewer, heating, cooling, equipment, appliances, fireplaces, interior features. Let's see if it says anything about, your elevator. If it's not working, you got to talk about that. Just have exterior and exterior features, termite, pest control, structural items, soil, boundaries, electrical, mold, moisture conditions, hazardous conditions, HOA, unpaid assessments, insurance, energy efficiency, alternate additional power, square footage. Well, where would you talk about broken windows? If there were any. Let's look at, let me see this one right here. Let's study this for a second. If anybody can find anything it says about windows, holler.
There's an energy
24.
efficiency with windows, but I don't think that's it.
No, which one did you say, Mark?
24,
24?
yeah,
Energy efficiency?
Yeah.
That just, I don't know if that talks about broken windows though.
well, efficient windows.
No, it's just, have you had an energy efficient assessment? No. Have you had energy improvements? No, that's nothing to do with broken windows. I don't think there's any place in here to mention that there's broken
If it's
windows.
broken, that's not efficient.
Well, that's possible. You're stretching that one now.
Stuck in there.
Additions and remodels.
That's where I thought it might
Would you
go.
put it under 12 in interior features? You know, there's-
Well, that might be it. Let's read what it says. It says, are you aware of any past or present problems with any of the following?
Skyline.
Ceiling fans, dumbwaiters, elevators, flooring, stone marble, villa tub, indoor pool, spa, hot tub, sauna, skylight, steam showers, wet bar. Nothing about windows.
Skylights, that's in there.
What's that, Lisa?
And 12, it talks about if the skylights leak.
Yeah, but that's specific because skylights always leak. And that's why they put that in there. But that's still not regular windows, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Would that be a thing that should be added?
well, you know, no one's ever really pushed it before. They've changed this just recently. You know, they've changed it many times over. No one's ever thought about broken windows are just probably, you know what, if, as a buyer, if you see them, you want them. If you don't see them, you miss them.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't show you have to disclose them on here.
The last offer I wrote up, which it failed on Monday, but anyway, I specified that I wanted the 2 basement windows replaced because I could tell there was moisture in them and they
Yeah.
were old aluminum windows. And the one had been replaced, but the 2 hadn't.
You know, I've seen that. If you're looking and you've had window issues in the past, you're going to look at the windows, no question about it, especially to see if the seals are broken in between the double pane. That happens a lot. They just wear out.
Yeah.
You know, a little moisture in there. I've had that many, many times. But nowhere in here that I can see does it talk about disclosing broken windows. And so it becomes a buyer's responsibility, in my opinion, to look at them. Now, here's a question to ask your inspector. Next time you hire an inspector, ask him, do you look for broken windows just out of curiosity? If you see a broken window, would you note that? I'd ask him. And I would suspect that most of them would say yes, I would think. I mean, so I'd say everything I found, anything, cracking the cement they look at, you know what I mean?
My inspector broke a window on the house.
That's happened many times before, I'm sure.
Whoops.
Tell you a sad thing about, interject some personal story about concrete and cracks. Oh my gosh. So, as you know, I changed my driveway because I hate concrete. I hate the thought of concrete. I hate to pay a penny for concrete. You know what I mean? It just seems like such a big expense for a waste of money. And my driveway's been a disaster for years. And so finally, I just thought, I can't look at this anymore. And Courtney had theirs done, and it's got you pretty cheap. I was like, there's no way. So I called the guy, came out and bid the thing. And I was like, now keep in mind, the bid I had before that, which was probably 10 years ago, was $12,000. This guy bid it for $4,400. So I was thinking, maybe the concrete's gone way down or I'm missing something. And that was $4,400 with 7-bag concrete. They usually use 6-bag concrete, which is the hardness of the concrete. So I said, I want 7-bag up here. It's a little colder next to the mountain. He said, it probably doesn't make any difference. I said, well, it's making a difference to me. It was only $150 more. So I put it in the driveway, and my neighbors all came out because we've all had the same problems up there. And then my neighbors find out after my driveway's done, this guy's not licensed. So nobody will use him. And he's a nice guy, but I could tell he's just out there pushing the envelope. You know, I didn't care. I didn't know. I didn't ask him for a license, but so I didn't pull a permit to get it done, which I guess you're supposed to. I didn't know any of that either. I assume he's out there doing it all day long.
Was he illegal?
No, he looked like you. So anyway, he does my driveway. I mean, he did an okay job. It wasn't like that perfectly smooth concrete, but I don't care about that because it gets icy up there anyway. And, but it looked good enough to me. And my neighbors who finally decided to do theirs for sure hired the real guy. Theirs a little bit bigger than mine, $10,400. And they just felt they just needed to go with a guy that was licensed. So he comes out, digs it, lays the thing. I was talking to him and going back and forth and, telling me what my guy wasn't licensed. He said, well, yeah, a lot of them aren't. We were talking about it. He was talking about how great his reputation was in town, and he wants everything right. So they lay the concrete, everything's fine, and we're out there looking at it yesterday. It's been a while. They can't drive it for 2 weeks, and you know how concrete's set in big square sections. So we go up to one of the square sections. They got a massive crack right down the middle of one of these brand new sections, and I'm thinking, man, my $4,400 one looks pretty good. No cracks in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to fix it. But it's not just it's a hairline crack. And literally, we actually got a couple of days ago, but we went and looked at it again last night. It's even getting wider. So what are they going to do? And the guy's disappeared. Well, you almost are going to have to take that piece out. But you know what a pain that's going to be? Oh my gosh, they're just sick about it. But hey, you know what? In some cases, you don't get what you pay for. Yeah.
You paid for the license.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I think that's enough on that. I just, it's just so interesting how many calls I'm getting and Will is getting of situations after the closing. It was like, it's just a rush of them. I mean, one was 6 months ago, and they got water, from these big storms that came through. In fact, that week when we had those microbursts, I think we had, like I said, 6 or 7 of homes we'd sold had gotten water in them. And I was when I told other agents that, I said, hey, you're not alone. Call so-and-so. And so I said, oh my God, that is not me. It could have been just that freak storm that caused it. I said, I'll guarantee it probably was, and so, you can see water stains, can't you, on the bottom of, and it had been there and, in the unfinished area of a home. I mean, you can tell if water soaked up into the drywall, in a storage area. So, anyway, we're, it's not going to go away. We're seeing a lot of that, but one of the other ones I got called last week was up here, and during those microbursts, they had no water. Now, we had this little tiny rainstorm the other day. Water got into the basement. And of course, they said that seller must have known about it and didn't disclose it. Seller says, I've never had water in the basement. So was it a delayed reaction? I don't know. Was the water table under that house just so saturated that this last storm finally just pushed it into the, who knows? And how can you ever prove it as a seller? But as a buyer, but the thing that nobody wants water in their house. That's the biggest problem. And probably you have no clue where it comes from. Water can be coming from 100 yards that way, and yet it shows up right here, and you just can't find out where it's coming from. It's really a pain. So anyway, those are problems. Just be prepared for after closing how to handle it. It's really important how you handle it, and don't get too desperately involved in it. Anyway, any questions on another topic? Anyone? You guys are all geniuses.
No.
Did you ever find out about the section 4 in the rep C about, you thought it was an interesting question and something about moving in?
Section 4.
I think it was section 4 in the rep C.
I rep these right here. Section 4 is, what is section 4? Section 4 is prorations and assessments. Yeah. You talking
Said you were
about?
gonna find about it. I'll find it.
It was an assessment and when the assessment was.
No. I'll find it. I'll find it.
But we talked a lot about that, assessments. You have no questions on assessments, do you? Anyone? For sure? Okay. So when's the assessment due?
When does the assessment due?
At the time it was assessed.
Well, exactly. If you go to the minutes, it tells you what it's assessed. It could be assessed, it's assessed $1,000 per year. Well, that means it's 1,000 now, and then if a guy buys it, then he's gonna get assessed and he's gonna get assessed. It wasn't $3,000 now, pay it any way you want. So how it's assessed is very important to find out when you have something like that. So
Isn't that why the minutes are so important to pass along during due diligence?
that's why it's not just important, it's required. You have to have it. You know, so you don't get caught in some ugly trap, you know? What else can we talk about this morning, this fine morning? By the way, those that participated yesterday, thank you. 2 winners in here. You know, do those girls like you or something? There's no way you were the most creative costume out there.
I'm
Unbelievable.
so surprised.
They like to sing.
Well, that's what I think.
Yeah.
Or they thought Mark was somebody else.
Actually, a couple of ladies, especially the Russian girl, was like, "You look hot."
I'm
Maybe that was it.
The Russians.
Yeah.
Wow. I've never thought of Mark as hot, but I can't. From now on, I will. From now on, I just might. Did you guys see the picture, the photos? Did you see the photo of Peter proposing to John Bach?
John looked amazing.
John was
looked
so
amazing.
amazing.
That was hot.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Yes,
You
yes.
know what? I have a question regarding assessment that may interest people, may come up. So there hasn't been an assessment for this complex, this older complex. And I just found out that the roof is 25 years old.
Oh, my gosh, it's
Okay.
coming, it's coming.
That assessment's coming, but there isn't an assessment yet. So how do you protect your buyer?
Well, just knowing that it's 25 years old and that it's possible, you just got to adjust your offer based on knowing that you're going to be assessed a nice chunk of money in the next couple of years. You know,
Can't you also check the reserves?
Mhm.
Because some of that should be built into the reserve.
it should,
They've got
it should. If
they've
the
got a
reserve's
study.
over 10%,
Yeah.
because you have to keep it at least at 10% at all times. If
Well,
they've
that's good
got,
to know.
you know, like, I don't know if you know Gary, guys know Gary Howard, but he's the treasurer for his HOA at Quail Brook.
Oh.
And they got millions in the bank. I mean,
It's
they're
amazing how much these
they are
HOAs
so
have.
well heeled and financially they're ready for anything, you know, but not all of them are like that, you know. And so that's a great point, Dave. Just that's what you want to find out. How big is the reserve? If it's 20%, 25% reserve, yeah, it'll be an assessment, maybe not as much as it could be. Unless it's exactly 10%, then everybody's going to be assessed the cost of the new roof on their property, which could be expensive.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting is we live in an HOA and we just had that study done as to what the replacements were in times and all that. And this is now the second one we had, but the first one was done 3.5 years ago. So they were doing it every 3 years, and that's in the bylaws, which I thought was kind of an interesting fact in its own right.
Oh, yeah.
But then at the same time, we actually